Hello, dear friends. My name is Sofya Dorinskaya. I am the president of the International Bureau for Human Rights in the field of mental health and the director of the Sofya Dorinskaya Medical Information Center. I am a doctor by education. I worked as a psychiatrist for many years. Now I am telling you, my viewers, the people who contact us at the organization, the truth about psychiatry. And the purpose of my videos is educational. I explain things to people in simple terms as I see it, using plain language about the biological processes that occur in the body, and I also talk about the substances that are prescribed to people in one way or another so that you have the information. The goal of my videos is to inform. So today I want to tell you, what is stress? Every day, working with information, every day tracking articles on the internet about stress, scientists have learned how to treat stress. They've discovered a new medicine for stress. All diseases are caused by stress. I get the impression that the authors of these articles, well, journalists, that's understandable, never mind them, but those people who provoke the creation of the authors of these articles might be some doctors or pharmacists or maybe someone else who somehow deliberately forget what stress actually is, what this mechanism is in the human body, and what needs to be done to weaken the impact of stress and prevent it from destroying the human body. The full name of stress is Celia's stress. Celia is a scientist. Celia's stress. Celia is a scientist and biologist who devoted practically his entire life to describing the mechanism that he named. Stress. This biological mechanism was originally identified and referred to by its first name, which was the general adaptation syndrome. This process, more commonly known today by the acronym GAS, describes the various stages of the body's physiological response to stress. And Celia began to describe this bodily reaction as general adaptation syndrome, and then somewhere in the middle of the 20th century, he started calling this mechanism stress. So what is it? Stress is a natural biological response. It is the complex physiological reaction of the human body to various external pressures or internal emotional irritants and stressors. Let's take a closer look at this process. Right here, we have a person to illustrate. And this person is affected by external or internal irritants or stressors. What can be considered an external irritant or stressor? It's the weather. Sudden weather fluctuations, such as a weather that is far too cold or perhaps much too hot for a particular living organism. All of these environmental factors are significant stressors, and all of these conditions are persistent irritants. What other external stresses can there be? Polluted air. An external stressor can be aggressive water or an aggressive environment of some kind. These can also be classified as either external or internal stressors. This includes low quality or unsafe food, food that contains few nutrients. Since we are humans, thinking beings, stressors or external irritants can also include socioeconomic conditions. Just yesterday, your savings, they were actually significant and you had enough for an apartment. Today the dollar went up and you basically lost all your savings. That's quite a stressor, let me tell you. A person gets fired from their job, loses a loved one, or loses their property. There can be prolonged stresses, long-lasting situations where a person can't get out of debt their entire life. Or they got into debt when a person just can't manage to build relationships with their relatives. Of course, and a stressor can be some kind of pain, any pain, whether sudden, chronic, or acute. That's also a stressor, an internal kind of stressor. It doesn't matter why, of course, when an illness has already developed, but what is pain really? A person broke their leg. That's a stressor, that's a serious stressor, it's an injury. Or someone drank some kind of aggressive liquid and so on and so forth. All of these are stressors. How does the body respond to external or internal stressors? When the body is subjected to this kind of pressure, no matter what kind, whether physical or emotional, whether it's related to some kind of loss, it doesn't matter what it is. How does the body react? The human body begins to actively mobilize every single one of its internal resources through a series of complex and specific biochemical reactions, which are fundamentally based on the intricate functioning of the endocrine system. The body initiates this comprehensive process of mobilization. To put it another way, if we were to draw a comparison between this and a different scenario, such as a conflict or the imminent threat of war, the state immediately starts to make preparations. What does it do? It officially announces the start of a mobilization. Even the specific word used is exactly the same, calling up and mobilizing active warriors from the reserves. Or for another example, the state prepares itself by making its reserve soldiers undergo various types of qualification procedures and so on. So this fundamental idea of mobilization in order to effectively cope with some emerging threats or unforeseen national crises, with emerging suboptimal living conditions, whether external or internal, is actually provided for in nature. This is an absolutely normal reaction. But the most important word here is this. What does our body mobilize? The human body effectively mobilizes its internal reserves. Dear and highly respected viewers, if your body has these essential reserves, if you consistently eat well and consume high-quality, nutritious food, if you carefully keep track of your vital vitamin and mineral balance, and if you make sure that you don't follow those silly, restrictive, one-sided diets, right? This is how you maintain your health. Sorry for being blunt, but your mother ate well. During pregnancy, she wasn't given any psychoactive substances, and your body was already formed under good conditions. Your body has a lot of favorable conditions. Reserves? What does this mean? There is a pattern to how the body survives. Then this is the pattern of the stages of stress. This is our first stage. It's called the alarm stage. Well, honestly, I wouldn't really call it the alarm stage and break it down like that. Yes, that's what I would say. This is the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage. What characterizes them? The alarm stage is characterized by the body recognizing these stressor conditions for itself. One way or another, well, sorry, if a child constantly fails at school, I'll say it again. Nowadays, textbooks are deliberately designed so that children do poorly in school. This is done on purpose. So this child can't absorb the material. The school curriculum has been deliberately shortened so that children can't master it. And the child can't manage it. They're getting stuck. And this is actually a stressor. It's a very serious stressor. All of the child's bodily resources are mobilized. The child says, no, I can handle it. What does this mean from a biological point of view? Their resources are being mobilized. Usually at this stage, children become restless. They start sleeping poorly and they seem all tense, collected, and so on. It feels like the person isn't relaxed. Whether it's children or adults, they just can't relax. The person is always walking around looking very serious. Everything is focused on coping with the stress. The subsequent phase of this process is formally and officially recognized as the stage of resistance or immunity. But actually, I personally think that's a somewhat misleading or inaccurate designation, because there is no real lasting immunity to be found here. This is the critical stage when the physical body and the person are both really trying their best to actively cope with and manage the challenging circumstances they face. A child studies more, an adult spends longer hours at work. At this stage, people start reading some books or something. If they lose money, they frantically look for ways to cope with the situation. If some financial organization goes bankrupt, they go to law enforcement agencies. In other words, this is when a person starts fighting for their life. I want to draw your attention once again. At this point, reserves are mobilized. And in the third stage, when, there are no more reserves left, biologically they are gone. Reserves are a biological concept. These are proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, and trace elements. These are the components of natural substances, the components of mediators, the components used to build cells, even the very hormones that the hormonal system draws from. And this is what ensures the increased activity of the organism. These are not some non-existent or abstract things. These are very concrete things. And the third stage, it's called the exhaustion stage. Sorry, this is the stage when the reserves are depleted. There are no more left. And this is where the collapse happens. This is where severe illnesses set in. And as Celi himself said, and as has been absolutely confirmed, this is what it means when they say all diseases are from nerves, all diseases are from stress. In reality, at this point, no one can say exactly which disease will develop. Anything from a heart attack to cancer. At this stage, the body is falling apart. Why? Because there are no reserves left. Everything has been used up, so to speak. Everything is gone, there's nothing left. The body has nowhere to draw from. It can't rebuild itself, can't sustain the fight for survival. That's it. From a psychological point of view, anything can happen at this stage. Once again, I want to say, from observing people, you can't draw a clear line here. Here you need to draw it like this. Because the longer the stress lasts and the longer it goes on, the more a person tries to fight these stressors. Their line isn't straight. It gradually declines. Ideally, it should be straight. It shouldn't go up, it should go straight. But here the line gradually goes down and then it continues. This collapse that we see and which is absolutely real. For example, people write to us, a young man writes, I ask him, how did you end up in psychiatry? He says, I broke up with my beloved girlfriend. And I thought, there you go, you can just... In his own words, he said, I thought this situation wasn't affecting me at all. I even started working out, and in general, I was in a pretty good mood. I decided not to think about her. But after some time, I developed a severe depression, up to the point of hallucinations. And no one has ever cancelled hunger-induced hallucinations. I understand that during the siege of Leningrad, when it's obvious that the person in front of you is starving and hallucinating from hunger, that's understandable. But even if the person sitting in front of you right now is hallucinating, if they've been under stress for a long time and their reserves aren't being replenished, then at that level, your plate of noodles and a single cutlet, which you often write to us about eating, is like a drop in the ocean. 5 cutlets. You need to eat them all in one sitting. And ideally, you should have 5 to 6 such meals a day, especially when you're in this kind of situation. Only then can we talk about replenishing your reserves. So when you reach the stage of exhaustion, anything can happen. Here you can have psychoses, you can have neuroses, cancer can start to develop, you can have strokes and heart attacks. Basically, if you take the entire medical reference book, that's exactly what we're talking about here. Why? Because at the forefront of everything stands... At the forefront, this is the first and most important thing. This is the depletion of reserves and their failure to recover. And why did we at the Center for Medical Information create that very test for deficiency? Ladies and gentlemen, this is where everything begins and where it ends. In order for you to return to a normal state, the first thing you need to look at is what your reserves are and whether you have any at all. People send us tests, people with critical deficiencies. Magnesium, potassium, calcium, B vitamins. Critically low. Do you know what critically means? It means that in another month or 2, that's it. And simply, a person won't be able to live. Then these terrible diseases will start. Then the body will begin to fall apart. And these are young people. And the first thing we look at is whether you have any reserves left, if you still have them. What does this psychiatry do? Now the pharmacies, the popular ones, they tell you, you have depression here, you feel bad here and here, right? What do? They give you a drug. What does the drug do? Your body is already as it is. It's leaking, so to speak. It's already starting to break down as it is. At this point, the reserves are only enough for it to just breathe, maybe get up, eat something, and lie back down. Honestly, there are no reserves left anymore. What does psychiatry offer? Psychiatry gives you a drug. And what does it do? And with the help of drugs, these stimulants, it artificially pulls you out. But at what cost? What do drugs do? They gather the last bit of strength from your, fading body. And with those last reserves, they somehow drag you out. But when the effect of the drugs wears off, you fall even lower. Everything gets even worse, and on top of that, terrible pain sets in. Because when you use stimulants to deplete your body's reserves, it causes such an imbalance. There are so many nerve impulses that you end up with pain, hallucinations, voices, and anything else you can imagine. Again, just look at all of psychiatry. It's all there. So what should you do? You need to provide your body with reserves. I don't really know what advice to give, what you can do to avoid stressors, so that to communicate well, to study well, you need to learn how to communicate, and you need to learn how to absorb knowledge, so you don't lose money. But here, honestly, I can only give very amateur advice. But from a doctor's point of view, from a biological perspective, as long as you have the opportunity, you should take care of your reserves. At our center, why do we do the test? Please come and find out whether you have reserves or not. You'll find out if you do. And what are reserves? Those are the very deficiencies. Right now, we are conducting a test for 33 substances. Do you have a deficiency of these substances? If you are experiencing stress right now, the dollar has jumped, I don't know. Those currency depositors are already blocking central Moscow. People have really lost a lot. It's all stress, and how they're going to change things now is unclear. One woman was already being taken away by ambulance. This is what happens. People just collapse. It's like they're being mowed down. If you are currently in this stage on this platform, take this test. We will adjust your diet for you if you feel like you are already falling apart. Antidepressants, tranquilizers, antipsychotics, if hallucinations have already started, these are not the solution. This is not the answer. They will only further damage your body, because all you really need is to replenish your reserves. Because if life, is a struggle right now, then you can't fight a war on an empty stomach. Every army is followed by supply trains. These are your supply trains. If your supply trains are empty, if you haven't ensured the delivery of provisions for the war, the army will disappear. This is what stress really is. This is how stress should be managed. And this is what, in fact, the Center for Medical Information with Sofya Dorinskaya actually does, providing you with informational services. We, roughly speaking, comb through your supplies to see what you actually have. And we help very competently. Here too, advice like just take some vitamins doesn't work. As many people as we've worked with, everyone who follows our recommendations to the letter reports that everything is going well. But as soon as we get someone undisciplined, that's when the real trouble starts. When you check what they're actually taking, it's not great. Sometimes it turns out they're not taking anything at all. Well, again, it all depends on how good of a caretaker you are, how well you look after your own body. So that's exactly what we do. That's where everything starts, and that's where everything ends. And the resources of your body are the key to a long, productive, and healthy life. Thank you for your attention. I hope everything was clear. If you have any questions, please ask. I'll be happy to answer them. This was